Welcome to the Life of a Marketer podcast. And I'm really excited today because I have a very interesting guest that has been different from some of the guests that we've had so far. This is Law Smith. Law has kind of an interesting career in marketing. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So, Law, tell us about what it is that you do and your marketing and also your job at night as well.
So there's a duality to my life, like a really poor man's Batman. I have a day job where I own my own small to medium business advisory meets a marketing agency. I run that. I'm president of that. Do a lot of digital marketing stuff as kind of a player coach. Sometimes you got to get in there. Most of the time, managing specialist. Um, and then at night, I've been my moonlighting career is a stand-up comedian. And I hope I'm funny on this, but I can't promise anything. Because I tell clients that in a discovery meeting, and I used to keep those worlds separate, but the preface I give them is whoever your favorite comedian's like, I'm probably not like them because like they're like, oh, I love Jeff Dunham. And I'll be like, you're not gonna like my stuff. And then in between those two things, I have a show called Sweat Equity. If you go to sweatequitypod.com, it's where we interview. The idea is to interview people smarter than us or who have experienced things we haven't. We come at it. The beauty of like, I'm kind of smart and dumb at the same time. So the beauty of, and Eric, my co-host, is the same way. And so, it helps in marketing to look at things as a dumb guy sometimes, where you're like, no one's going to respond to this. It's got way too much text on the ad, something like that, right? But also have, be a super dork for anything I'm working on. So Sweat Equity is it's the number one business comedy podcast in the world, mostly because there's no one else in our category. But
No, I've never heard of that before. So yeah, I can see that.
and we're the number one comedy/business podcast because just for we have to you have to self promote a lot, and we're horrible at promoting our own show. We're working on that. You can use the cobbler's children has no shoes dilemma excuse for only so long, and then you're just lazy. It's just I don't want to hear myself on video and cut up clips, and then we know, and the sad thing is we do this for everybody else as a client, right? So it's like we know the integrated marketing touch points to do it. It's just icky to do it for ourselves. We're getting over that.
Awesome. So believe it or not, I've actually had a CMO on the podcast that was also does stand up. So you're the second person.
I bet he's not funny. No.
No, she was funny. She had a couple
she was funny
comments, but not as nearly as dynamic as you. She was more serious, on the podcast. So.
Yeah, I know business people that do stand up, professionals that they're into it, right? I moved to LA at 21, right after I finished at Auburn University, to pursue stand up. So that was always like I kind of think of myself as stand up first, even though I'm probably way better at the day job. But people who get into it later just because they need a creative outlet, they usually stink. But I don't know her, so I can't say anything about her.
Yeah, she kind of said, I don't know though. She was funny in the podcast a couple times. So
well, business life is funny. Like when you're that, and that's kind of the crux of the podcast. It's kind of like I hang out with feral cat comedians, at night that are saying the craziest stuff on stage. And then you hang out, I go in clients' offices, or I was for a couple of years recently, I was plucked up to be in-house for a couple agencies. And it was like, the office thinks I'm a little kooky, and the stand-up world thinks I'm like Mr. Business. So, it's kind of one of those things. A lot of my Republican friends think I'm a Democrat. My Democrat friends think I'm a Republican. I don't know. I kind of exist in this weird kind of middle ground.
All right. So Law, tell us about who do you work with it sounds kind of like you're kind of like a little bit of a fractional CMO, and you can implement some of the strategies that you put in as an advisory. Who is it that you would like to work with, that if they contacted you today, what companies would you say no to, and what companies would you like to work with?
Yeah, my niche became law firms. And I think that's because maybe my dad was an attorney for 35 years. I'm in Tampa. I'm based out of Tampa. My uncle's the president of a law firm that has 100 lawyers. All their best friends are lawyers. They all hang out together. A third of all my guy friends I grew up with are attorneys, which I didn't realize was weird until recently. I was like, oh yeah, that is kind of strange. Tampa Bay area is the most marketed per attorney area in the country, like metropolis, which I find fascinating. So that became my niche, and I kind of fell into it. And most people don't want to have attorneys as clients because they don't want to be challenged by them or have to fit. I feel like stand up helps leverage, or stand up is leverage in a way in my professional life, because I feel like I can take things that are complicated to explain and find a through line with whoever I'm talking to, the audience, and be able to explain this thing in kind of a way they can understand. And I feel like a lot of people in the marketing world don't focus on communication a lot. And then I'd say we work well with any professional services companies, logistics, private equity is starting to hit us up a lot more because they just want us, they want to sign us and then do the work for everything they acquire, which is great. So any PE firms, any VCs out there, angel investors, I'm around, because those are great, because then you get a good working relationship with one person or entity, and you don't have to kind of restart the psychological part with everybody. And then things I don't want as clients, restaurants, one restaurant owner, restaurant groups, those are cool. The single restaurant owner or bar owner, that's why Bar Rescue will always have people on the show, because they're just insane. Like most small businesses, they start a small business because they're really good at one thing, but they don't ever realize, a lot of owners don't ever realize they got holes in their game. Like I know I hate doing accounting, right? And legal, while I understand a lot of business legal, I feel both of those out, because those are not, I just need to know enough to talk to them, right? I feel like a lot of bar owners and lawyers are this way too. I feel like they think of themselves as the specialty first, because that was the skill that brought them there, but they never go, okay, now I need to be a business person,
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And then yeah, those two, and then anybody with like a Etsy store that's selling like turquoise jewelry or something. I don't want your mom's
Yeah.
kooky friend as a client.
Yeah.
I'm very picky about e-commerce, because that's a whole other. I do a lot more lead generation with service companies. E-commerce, I'm very picky with, because that's a whole other beast, and you really have to get into the operation side with them, because if you're marketing a lot, they're sloppy about automating their ERP system, or whatever they use to have supplies reported to you. You can stock out and really shoot yourself in the foot, or the products they don't do enough volume and they're too cheap, so you don't really have that margin.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Working with lawyers, I was thinking about that. Lawyers are they have no time, and so you have to like just be verbally very clever with them in the way that you say things. I can see that. You got to be quick and summarize things, and so I can
You
see
have to
that you would
be
be.
you have to be more like, I treat it more like a football coach to them, because they respond to that. That's how they're taught. I kind of have that naturally. I'm kind of intense. If I'm like, we're building a model on a whiteboard, I'm just, because that's my favorite thing to do, is build a whole kind of, I have a lead gen model I call it the totem pole model, and I build it out in front of them, because it's kind of a neat parlor trick. But I start with strategy. That's my approach every time. I go macro to micro. People want to get caught up in tactics. They go, I need to hire you to do our social media. And you're like, okay, A, what does that mean? You don't even know what service you're asking for. And B, you know, that I don't do that. I'm not, it's got to have a lot of different tactics that leverage off of each other. And
Right.
if you don't know who you are and your goals, you know, I don't want to, I don't want, or you don't want to work on it with me, I can't work with you. Because I tried to take them on. I tried to take on these pet project people and like show them an outline of a business plan because no one writes business plans for some reason.
Hmm.
And so lawyers, you just have to be very curt with them, very blunt. You got to challenge them too, because they, in whatever reason, they kind of like that. And it, or, you know, personal trainer, college football coach, whatever kind of metaphor you want to use, but they, you know, and just know that they're going to be very stickly. They're going to get focused on, hey, there's a grammatical error on the copy on the site, a tiny one that may or may not actually be incorrect, right? But they're going to, if you don't fix that first, we can't talk about anything else, right?
Right. Very detailed.
Because, because to them, to them, their philosophy is how you do anything is how you do everything for someone they hire.
Yeah.
I think that's a theologian monk, Richard Rohr, kind of talks about how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think they believe that on anybody they're paying for outsourced stuff. But at the end of the day, my biggest thing is to show ROI. Everything's ROI driven. When I report, if I have a client on a kind of lead gen monthly basis, I do it like a doctor's vitals, right? You know, like a ER doctor will go around, they'll check the vitals. What's the first thing on the report of the person? It's vital, right? So I just put ROI. And if we're pretty early in the game, I'll go, here's the projected ROI. Here's what it looks like. And then here's something no one else does either. I put the adjusted ROI, which is my fee with all the other expenses, because agencies think they're tricking people. A, most don't show ROI, which is insane. B, the business owner that hires you or the CMO that hires, that's how they look at it anyway. They don't look at you like, oh, we're getting this ROI back. They go, okay, yeah, but what are we paying them too? So they think they're kind of skipping around it, but they're just kind of delaying the inevitable if they're not doing the performance.
Right.
And most marketing agencies are great at business development. They're terrible at the actual work.
Right. Right. Yeah, I find that to be true. Yes, I agree with that.
I'm the opposite. I'm bad at biz dev. I'm working on that though.
All right. Awesome. So what sort of advice do you offer to people working in the marketing industry right now?
If you're young in the game, you know, let's say I'll try to talk to age groups. If you're young, like you're in college, high school, college, or right out of college, like best thing to do is, you know, do whatever if you want to get in marketing, you know, do whatever other job, like being a waiter or something, and then go be an intern, you know, eat crow a little bit. Every marketing agency will take an intern that is hungry, and you know, you can tell them to hire on character, not talent. I'd say if you're in that middle group where you're an adult, you're in the middle, you're a professional, you need to, like LeBron James coming in the league, where he would work on one skill every year and add it to his game. He started as like a single blade Swiss Army knife, and then he added like post up game, and then he added his 3-pointer, and then year 4 he added being a point guard, you know, bring the ball down the court. So like start adding, because there's so many specialties. And I'm not a programmer, but I know enough to talk to a programmer, you know, like and I'm not a graphic designer, but I concept all the design, and I have people execute the grunt work of it.
Sure.
So those kind of things. And then if you're older, you know, the adaptability is number one. If you're kind of in a rut and you think it's it's probably you're not adapting. So
awesome. Thank you. All right. So what other successful people in marketing like yourself would you like to acknowledge that should be on the Life of a Marketer podcast?
My co-host, Eric Redinger. who he came in to my agency as just kind of looking for something to do. He's a stay-home dad, and then he's better at me at a lot of stuff I taught him. So, he's a different animal than I am. He's not as manic and and he may wear a tank top too on the show though. I can't promise. We are in Florida, so we can kind of get away with it. And so let's see, other people. Dean Akers is my mentor. I call him Business Dad. You can find him through our episodes. And then my BFF and business attorney, Steve Fantetti, would be a good one because he's an entrepreneur as well, but he knows corporate business law. He can tell you everything. He's like a robot. He's like AI robot. You can ask him anything, and it's like his callback is like Will Ferrell at the end of Old School in the debate. He can just reel off an answer, and it's like, is he reading Wikipedia in his own brain? So I think it's because he's Canadian. He's got a better disposition than most.
Awesome. All right. One final fun question, and I've been looking forward to asking this question. So, tell me the oldest technology that you remember using.
So, I kind of want to. What age do people say on this show like they remember? Because for some reason, I don't have a lot of memories before maybe 5 years old. Some people are like, how do you not? And then some people are like, yeah, I don't remember anything before age 11. And you're like, okay, cool. You had a trauma-filled household, but you blocked out a lot of your life. But I grew up in a good house. My dad was an NFL running back, then was a attorney for 35 years. And so my parents are still married now. And so I don't know. I'm trying to think. My initial, at first blush, I'd say Game Boy, but I really think it's two things. It's either a pink boom box that was a tape recorder where my sister was making mixtapes, and I would just dance in a room like a 5-year-old, and both my sisters would dress me up in like girl clothes because I was their doll. And maybe that's why I do stand up, because something messed me up right then. But
disturbing.
No, well, and then I had to wear like my sister's hand-me-downs in school, like Esprit shirts and splatter paint, white jeans, and like the socks with the little frillies on the outside.
Ow.
Not all at once, not all of that combo at once, but like if stuff wasn't clean, I had to like so there's that. And I remember making mixtapes on that with my sister Anderson. But the other one I had was, we had a Zenith TV. I was born in 1984. So say 1989, we had the Zenith TV. We had it until probably 2001. Had no remote. I thought remotes were like fancy. I thought you had to have like a fancy like TV to have a remote. I didn't know they'd been around since the 1950s. And so we had a 19-inch color Zenith with the fake wood panel on the outside that was plastic. And then since we lost the remote, you had two couches, and one was perpendicular to the TV. And my dad used to change channels with his toe. And then we all started kind of doing that. It's real lazy shiz right there, but we didn't have a remote and you didn't want to get up. And so we would change the channel with the remote. And on the TV. And I think I'm the only kid to ever get athlete's foot from a Zenith TV. I swear that's a true story.
Oh man, we've had people answer that question. You have no idea. Some people were talking about a Commodore, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's
yeah.
Really old.
That's before my time, I think.
Yeah, like this really old thing. And
I have another one. I just remembered. We bought a Macintosh brand new in 1989. I've only heard this story. I don't remember doing this. Apparently I was playing Oregon Trail floppy disk style. I thought it was an arcade game, right? And so I kept feeding it quarters, I kept finding quarters and feeding it into it. The green screen went, and then just that I broke the computer like maybe within a month of getting a brand new one. Like when Mac went before Windows came around in the 90s, Mac was what it is now. Like
Right.
it was the leader. And my parents are so low tech, it was like a big deal that they went out of their way to buy this thing, and I
Put
destroyed
quarters in it.
but when we got a compact Bessario 95, I taught myself a lot of stuff, taught myself how to program, Visual Basic, all that, Corel, Draw,
Right.
all that stuff.
Right. One of our other person that actually she's had the stand-up comedy as well. She mentioned that her parents told her that they had an Atari, but they told her that it would only work at night, that it wouldn't work during the day, so
Yeah,
that she wouldn't play it during the day. So she would only play it at night, totally convinced that that's the only time that it would work.
smart, smart. I was the third kid, so I was kind of left alone, and I got a TV in my room, and just obsessively watch TV or listen to Loveline every night on the radio. Probably bad for me, but whatever.
Probably the dumbest answer to this question was for the first podcast, I interviewed my mom who works for Cisco, and she said, a pencil.
Technically correct. I mean,
I was like, come on.
That's my favorite kind of comedy, by the way. It's dumb and smart. It's like, are you being a smart ass? But technology is not just gadgets. It's
That's right. That's true.
The wheel, building a fire, learning like whatever, or furnace, I should say. Those are technically technology, but I think you're talking about more of modern technology.
Right. That's what the question kind of implies, but that's okay. She wanted to answer like that. That's cool. Probably no one even watched it. It was the first episode. So
Well, we do a stock answer on our show, and it is a Rorschach test like yours. We ask everybody, what advice would you give your 13-year-old self? Feel free to steal that if you want another podcast.
I might add that in.
And so the answers we get are wild, and really we used to ask it at the end. Now we start at the beginning, because then it basically, it'll tell me what I need. Business is psychology, right? If you really break it down, right? And so navigating those waters, I realized that, like with stand up with an audience, you can feel an energy before you get on stage. And so if I can get that vibe of how the crowd is before I get up, if they're real tight, I'll say something just ridiculous up top that's crude, just to see if I can pop them, or I'll just tell them to their face, like, I didn't know we're at church. I didn't know this is a sad AA meeting, but no one's talking. In this one, apparently AA meetings, everyone blabs. But it's one of those things where you're like, if I can break it open or kind of challenge them, but now I can kind of go, oh, you entered this way. Here's choose your own adventure. I'm going to ask about your childhood that got you to there,
That's interesting. All right, awesome. Well, we're running out of time here. We try to keep this podcast short, Law, but I really enjoyed having you on the podcast. You're definitely a funny guy.
I appreciate it.
You made it super fun. Sometimes we're a little bit drier and more serious on this podcast. It was glad to have somebody break it up a little bit.
Life's too short, man, to be serious all the time, right?
That's right. That's right.
Taking yourself too serious is a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. So if you are watching this podcast for the first time, we stream this Tuesdays and Thursdays on social media, Central Standard Time at 11 a.m. You can also catch it. We release it at the same time on YouTube. So if you subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, you can get it when it comes out there as well. Watch it at any time. This is the Life of a Marketer podcast. Like and subscribe. Give me some love with the algo, please. Once again, thank you, Law, for jumping on our podcast.
And tell your people to share it with a friend. Like, you got that, you're listening right now. If you made it all the way to the end of this episode, pause it or finish it out, but hit that little square with the arrow button, send it to a friend that likes marketing, or is in the field, or just that person that you want to gab like gals with.
Awesome. Thank you, Law. I appreciate that.
All right, buddy. See ya.